In the time allotted to me, I will focus on certain political dimensions of the war. The war, which is currently experiencing a temporary pause, although the issues are there, we hope that the dialogue that would start in a couple of days' time would produce some acceptable, some shared basis of peace and stability in the region, because the peace and stability in the Gulf region is important not only for that region, but also for the rest of the world, as I would argue in my presentation. So I think the first important point that needs to be taken into account is that this has been an unfortunate war. Unfortunate in the sense that there have been a lot of human losses and material losses. And out of the three contenders in the war, the greater loss was borne by Iran, although Iran has shown resilience and resistance to a situation of unequal military capabilities. Iran, the war struggle has implications for the rest of the world because there has been a negative fallout of this war. Not only on the countries of the region, but the countries elsewhere, the countries that depended on the oil resources of that region and trade relationship with that region, they have also faced problems. And also a number of countries whose human power was based in that region. That has negative implications for them also. And in this case, the impact is not limited to the governments of other countries, but the ordinary people have also suffered because of this war, as we all experiencing a price hike in Pakistan and also elsewhere, which has a negative impact on ordinary people. Another dimension of this war that needs to be taken into account is that this war has the threat of becoming a regional war. Iran versus rest of the Gulf states, that possibility has been averted for the time being. So far as Pakistan is concerned, Pakistan adopted a kind of a balanced approach with an emphasis on active diplomacy for peace and stability in the region, and it has facilitated the present ceasefire and will be facilitating the dialogue. But ultimately, it is not the facilitator who makes the decision. It is the parties in the conflict that make the decision for peace and stability. Pakistan would be helpful, but we are dealing with two parties who have their own special way of dealing with things. If Trump is unreliable, he can make one statement in the morning and another statement in the afternoon. We have also to deal with Iran, which has played tough during these days and also shown adamancy in its attitude, but somehow it has come to the conclusion. Another dimension of this war that is important to understand, this war reflects an arrogance of power on the part of United States and Israel because of the disparity that existed in favor of the United States. I'm talking of the military disparity in favor of United States, and Israel was very much there. And this disparity created a misperceptions in the policy makers of these two countries that if they make a total warfare, a full impact of power, Iran would collapse maximum 7 days. That did not really happen. And other assumption that did not prove to be true, and you need to think about these two assumptions. One was that Iran would collapse in a week. And second assumption was that once there is an attack on Iran, the people in Iran would come out and revolt against the regime, and this will bring about a total change in Iran. That did not happen, because no doubt people were unhappy with the Iranian government. And we know that there was a major protest in January, December, end of December and January. But these people who had grievances against their government were not playing the game of United States. And they were not really protesting to face the devastation that was imposed by the United States on Iran. Therefore, the war brought internal harmony, internal coordination, internal tolerance despite differences. And that is why it has not gone in the way the Americans were thinking. So the basic question that we need to analyze, and you should think about, is what contributed to Iran's survival? And that's very important to understand, because that can apply to other countries also. Because what we have seen, that Iran over the time has learned to live on its own resources. That's very important factor. And also, Iran has relied basically on its resources, and its economy is primarily domestic based. Iran was not relying on IMF, World Bank, Asian Development Bank, donations from Western countries, because they were all boycotting Iran. Therefore, it relied on its own resources, oil resources, gas resources. And another factor that led to the survival of Iran was that practically Iran was at war since the Islamic Revolution in February 1979. First, Iran-Iraq War from 1980 to 1988. Confrontation with the United States right from the beginning, the day one of Iranian Revolution, confrontation starts with the United States. And sanctions, United Nations sanctions against Iran, American sanctions against Iran. Therefore, Iran was virtually at war. Then another pressure on Iran was from the states of the region, that is, Gulf states were also applying pressure on it. And therefore, in such a situation, in a situation of pressure right from the beginning, in a threat of war right from the beginning, Iran developed, as I said, based on itself on domestic sources. Its economy was domestic based, and geography has played a role in its advantage. Tehran is not on the sea front. Tehran is far away from sea, and that gives an advantage. And its ability to control Strait of Hormuz, and also use of modern technology, especially missiles and drones and modern communication technologies is important. This war, another political dimension of this war is that it represents two contradictory trends. On the one hand, you see use of modern technology. A non-contact war was experienced during these 5 weeks. Modern technology, modern aircraft, drones, missiles, and other non-contact war methodologies that was used here. So in a way, one trend was modern, updated, scientific, technological advantage. The other dimension is of the same war, that if we apply the principles of ethics and morality, principles of international law, international conventions, humanitarian law, laws of war, then I'm afraid it's a very primitive war. A war that did not pay any regard to these principles that I have very briefly highlighted. Even in the primitive time, the parties that would fight in the primitive time would observe certain principles for conduct of war. But here, there was no such things because hospitals, universities, industries, and medicine production units, so civilian institutions and civilian infrastructure, economic infrastructure was targeted during this war. That is, important. And United Nations appeared very much helpless in this respect. Therefore, in future wars, you will have to take into account that parties in a war can go to such an extreme. And other states will have to take into account this experience. And the final point which I want to mention at this stage is that the experience of the Gulf states has also to be taken into account because the security policies that the Gulf states adopted over time became irrelevant in the situation. What was the national security policies of these Gulf states? Allow United States to base its troops there, give bases to United States. Because of American military presence, their security will be ensured. That was the strategy which the Gulf states were doing. And also allow American companies because that will create American stake in the system. However, the presence of American military has proved to be a liability for these states. Therefore, my own feeling is that after the end of the war, these Gulf states will have to review their security policies. Instead of relying totally, completely on United States, they are likely to adopt independent approach and also build relationship with Russia and China. And also these states will look towards powerful neighboring states like Turkey, India, and Pakistan, who have modern technology. Therefore, that is going to change. Now, finally, what are the lessons for Pakistan? The important lesson for Pakistan is that when you are faced with an adversary, a stronger, powerful adversary, how do you deal with it? Pakistan is faced with an adversary which has a clear advantage in conventional military security. And it is here that you can learn from Iran's experience, how in a situation of imbalance, you deal with situation, and imbalance is to be taken into account. Therefore, to me, the lessons from Iran for Pakistan are, number one, you need to focus on your economy. You should be focusing on making an economy which is self-reliant, less dependent on external sources, because external sources will pull away in a difficult situation for a country. Second, societal harmony, and you need to spend more resources on human development, societal welfare, so that people have stake in the system. Third, focus should be on knowledge, on technology, on science. And here, the role of universities and research comes to play. Therefore, if you can excel in these fields, then you can perform much better in a situation of confrontation. Then also, you need to adopt and acquire modern technology, especially if the war becomes a non-contact war. And finally, you need to have a strong diplomatic core. That is, your ability to project yourself at the international level in a manner that your image is positive. And here we are not talking of simply official relationship. Even societal relationship, non-official relationship along with official relationship can strengthen your diplomacy. Therefore, all these things have to be taken into account. So I would conclude by saying that the Middle East war has a lot of lessons for us to learn, provided we examine the war as well as the diplomacy to diffuse the conflict in a dispassionate, manner, and also we learn from the war how to deal with the internal system. The final lesson of this war is, if it comes to crunch, if it comes to threat to your independence and territorial integrity, ultimately you will be alone to protect yourself. So you need to learn to stand on your feet. Thank you.